Hello, this is Luciana Turner of the LT&A Group, and I want to take a moment to discuss with you the compliance factor. Now, as you may or may not know, government contracting is a $60 billion industry. And in FY16, the federal government has allotted $60 billion in government contracting, 3% of which is set aside specifically for small businesses. Yes, that's right. You're talking about $2 billion earmarked for small businesses to perform for the federal government. Now, some of you may have not considered government contracting as an additional line of revenue for your company. And I want you to take a moment and consider it. And want to ask yourself these questions. Do I have a quality product and service? Hopefully, your answer is yes. Secondly, do you have a systematic method of delivery of those services or products? Third, do I have something that the government would even want to buy? Now, I'm going to take a little bit of time with that one. If you are a doctor, a psychiatrist, or a trainer, you may feel the government isn't buying what I'm offering. I'm here to tell you, yes, they are. The government is looking for not only the trainers, they're not only looking for um, delivery people, they're not only looking for uniform makers, they are looking for physicians as they overhaul and transform the medical arena. They're looking for psychologists and psychiatrists to serve as our soldiers and our everyday workers. They are looking for people like you to provide a service to them. Now, you awarded a fixed price contract. Yes, that's great. That's another line of revenue to up level your business. But I want to tell you, the contract is only the beginning. There are 10 key things you must take into effect and you must implement within your organization to continue to grow in contracting. Now, first, let's take a little moment for the little admin type stuff. If you want to ask me some questions, if you want to engage with me, I have a place for you to go. On Facebook, there's a group, the Compliance Factor group. Jump on Facebook, join the group, and then email me your questions. I'm in the group right now. I'm waiting for you to send me your questions, your comments, anything that you feel I need to add, subtract. If you want to just hold a one-on-one conversation, just jump in the group. I'm there. I'm waiting for you. Or you can just send me a tweet on Twitter at the LT&A Group LLC. Actually, on Twitter, my Twitter handle is LT&A Group LLC. Tweet. Just tweet me, and I'll be sure to respond to you. But let's continue this conversation about compliance and sustainability. In government contracting, the COTAR, the contracting officer, is looking at various things when they consider your proposals and when they consider whether or not they're going to award you additional contracts. The know, like, and trust element is essential in contracting, and it's the key to obtaining your first contract, your second contract, and your fourth and your fifth. But let's just talk about compliance for a moment. In your know, like, and trust with contracting, they need to see you. So you're going to have to go out and meet with these people. But here are some key elements that they're going to inquire about in considering whether or not they're going to up level you. And when I say up level, I'm talking about the difference between a $30,000 contract and a $300,000 contract and $1 million contract with a 5-year add-on. They need to be sure that your organization will be able to perform efficiently, perform effectively, and that you will be around for the long haul. Yes, they are looking at your longevity, your sustainability, the strength of your foundation, of your systems, and your capabilities. So let's talk about the first compliance factor. That's your policies and procedures. The government wants to know what you do, how you do it, and they want to know if you're going to do it consistently. Now, we're living in a new day and age. Once upon a time, the government had this thing called, as long as you was consistent, didn't matter if you was right or wrong. But we're in a new day. It matters if you're right or wrong, but that's another conversation. But they're looking at your policies and procedures. They're looking at whether or not your organization or you are able to be counted upon to not only perform the work of that contract, but let's say they need to add a new requirement. Now, the whole RFP, and that's a request for proposal, process is time consuming and it costs on both ends. So a lot of times the federal government will say we need to add on a service to an existing contract, but we don't want to recompete the entire contract. This is where your policies and procedures come in because you're already performing. Hopefully they like you. So they just need to say, can we add on this service? Can we add on another line of service to an existing contract? And that's called modifying a contract so that they can reduce their costs and not skip a beat. Now, let me back up a little bit. I think I've gotten a little ahead of myself. Compliance, government contracting compliance, is essentially your ability to adhere to the rules in government contracting, FAR, CAS, to adhere to the terms of your contract, what can be charged or what cannot be charged. That is, in essence, what compliance is. Now, there are steps to proving how compliant you are, and that is a topic for another day when we go discuss audit readiness. And hopefully, we'll get to that before my time is up. So, in doing, and I'm going to tell you, compliance is just so important. I mean, it's not the most beautiful, the most sexiest part of business, but it's the thing that if you're not doing it, if you're not keeping an eye on whether or not you're doing what you say you're going to do, the way you're going to do it every single time, it can cost you money. And it could mean the difference between being here today and not being here tomorrow. One of our biggest compliance things is paying taxes. The government wants to know when you pay your taxes and how. That's a part of your policies and procedures. The government wants to know how do you onboard new employees. That's a part of your policies and procedures. The government wants to know how do you handle disputes. There's a problem with the billing. They want to see that you have a procedure for handling that. Who is the go-to person? What happens if they can't do? What is their level of responsibility? Can they handle disputes for invoices for $5, 5,000, 10,000? Do they have to talk to somebody else? These are the things that the government looks at. And the more pristine and the more that you can assure them and they can see that you have these things in line, then your credibility goes up. Your sustainability increases. Your foundation is just that much more stronger. Because let me tell you, contracting, once you get in and you do it right and you do it consistently, the government is your friend. And a side note, if you are a strong subcontractor or if you're a strong small business working in this contracting world, the tier one contractors, which is commonly referred to as your primes. I'm talking about your Lockheeds, your General Dynamics, your Boeings, your billion-dollar government contractors will come and knock on your door. Don't forget I said there's a set aside strictly for small businesses. That doesn't mean the big guys doesn't want to play in that arena. It just means they have to be invited by a small contractor. And then on top of that, it's another mechanism for you to grow, to partner with these companies. But there's a compliance factor. The second compliance factor that the government looks at are your proper systems. Yes. Do you have an accounting system? Is it fully functional and up to date? Can it record costs by project, by contract, by Glenn was a contract line item? If your system is not that sophisticated, don't sweat it. We can get it there. But that is something that they want to know about. The government is reluctant, and quite frankly, in this day and age, you cannot obtain, maintain, or keep a contract and you don't have an accounting system. The days of Excel spreadsheets are over. And it's time consuming to do government contract on Excel spreadsheet. So we need to systematize things so that you can switch your labor and to do other things as needed to maintain your compliance in your organization. Your payroll system. How do you pay your employees? When do you pay your employees? They really want to know that. They want to make sure that you are actually paying your employees in a timely manner, and that those costs for that employee, whether they are a direct cost, which means they're working the contract and they're performing the services that you have agreed to do for the government, or if they're indirect, they are support staff that's just managing the day-to-day of the organization. They want to ensure that your payroll system integrates or talks to your accounting system so that you can keep all these costs straight. The government doesn't want to pay, just like the rest of us, we don't want to pay for anything we don't benefit from. And then we want to pay for what we benefit from, but we want to pay in a different manner. Hello, the government came up with that one. So let's just keep that in mind, that our systems, our accounting system, our payroll, our time recording, there is actually a regulation that tells you how you have to record your time. And there's actually a whole audit around your timekeeping system. Yes, they will just come in and audit your timekeeping system. Now, the government hasn't done a business system audit in a while, but that's okay. They found a way to get it done. They will just come in and question you and paper you to death over how your timekeeping system works, over how your payroll system works. So keep that in mind. There is a compliance factor to all things, and as tedious and how, nobody wants to talk to the marketing guy. Nobody wants to, but these are the essentials. People say, I only get excited when I'm making money. But if your back end is not together, if your back end isn't compliant, you will make no money on the front end. Hello. And who wants to work, get paid, to have somebody show up 5 years later to say, I want my money back because you weren't compliant in the first place? And the government asks for money back. Believe me, in the FY 2012 audit, the contractors in total had to refund $4 billion because stuff wasn't right. I don't know about you. I don't like giving back money. That's against my thought process. Matter of fact, I got ahead of thinking about it. No, we don't want to give money back. We worked hard. We provided the services. We exceeded. We excelled. And the fact that I didn't write a policy or a procedure, or that I can't prove that the way we did things is the way we were supposed to do things over a piece of paper, I will not write a check back to nobody for that. Sorry. I'm going to take the time, become compliant, become sustainable, and create that foundation for growth. That's the way it works in contracting. Actually, that's just the way it works in business. But federal government contracting especially. Let me take a little bit of time here because we're going to talk about records retention. I'm actually skipping on my list. You don't know that. I thought I would share it with you. Records retention, compliance factor, records retention. I want to share this with you. Now, I've been a compliance specialist for 12 years now. And one of my employers, which is one of the top 5 government contracting companies in this country, in the midst of the audit, the government was auditing subcontractor costs on a contract, and I spent hours, days, weeks digging through boxes, pulling stuff out of storage, calling up the subs, trying to find the proper records to prove that the costs that we billed the government were legitimate costs, that we actually spent that money. That money went directly towards that contract performance. And here's the proof. And we couldn't prove it. We just didn't have the records. I mean, we didn't have it. Now, at this time, I think it was like 2011, and the government was auditing us for 2007, 2008. I did say 2007. Actually, it was 2007, 8, and 9. But they turned around and decided to reopen 2006. So I'm in 2011 pulling boxes for 2006 transactions. Yes. So I went to the subcontractor. We're partners. They were our small business partner. You performed this service on this contract. We need the invoices. We need your receipts that support your invoice to us, that we in turn invoice to the government. They didn't have it. No one bothered to keep that airplane receipt. No one bothered to keep that meals receipt. Nobody bothered to keep anything. So then what I fell back on, I said, well, let me have your policy on records retention, and then I can kind of craft a tale on how we were complying, and we did what we were supposed to do, but your policy says X, Y, and Z, and that's why we don't have it. They didn't have that either. So they didn't have a policy to tell their employees what records they had to retain. They did not have a policy to tell their employees how long they had to retain those records. They didn't have a policy for their employees for anything. Basically, their story to me was, I'm a small guy and I only have 10 employees, and this contract was our biggest contract. I believe we were their only contract, I'm not sure at this point in time. But then I had to go back to my auditor. Now, I'm good at what I do. And I could take what I have and I'll walk that auditor through it to show you that, yes, we did what we said we were going to do. And we did it. We did it consistently every time. And we have been compliant in all aspects. Well, I wasn't good enough that day. And the government questioned those costs. And, I'm using some terms and things, but, let me break that down. A question cost is where you cannot provide the documents that the government wants, and the government asks for these documents through the audit agency. That proves that these are real costs. We didn't just make something up and stuck it on an invoice. So we couldn't do it. Our subs didn't have it to give to us, which was their non-compliance. We didn't have it because it was from a company. My company had bought a company that bought a company, so who knows where the records are. They're probably in somebody's living room garage somewhere. I don't know. But we were non-compliant because we didn't have the records. So the government told us, okay, that's fine. We want a check, and it was a 5-figure check for this amount of money because you cannot support your costs. So my employer said, okay. And they had to write. Now, we did a little fighting because the math was a little hokey, but that's okay. We had to write a check at the end of the day. And I'm just talking strictly about the subcontractor costs, our small business partner costs, because ultimately that check was a 7-figure check, and that was a battle. But then our legal contacted this small business and said, well, the terms of the contracts are was our subcontract agreement between you and I is if we get hit for an unsustained cost because you do not ultimately keep your records, you have to reimburse us for those costs plus any penalties. Nobody likes to give money back. So, not keeping a piece of paper for some airfare, not keeping a piece of paper for some meals, not keeping a piece of paper for some equipment you had to buy to perform on the contract. Now you have to refund that money back to the prime because the terms of your agreement said so. And they either didn't read it, they didn't understand what they was reading. I don't know. But they were shocked that it was in there. And they were shocked they had to write that check. Now that's a big deal. Nobody wants to have to do that. And nobody wants to do work to then turn around and give the money back for the work that they've done. See, the compliance factor, and I'm going to keep saying this until you hear it in your sleep. Compliance factor, compliance factor. The compliance factor says that I must create a foundation that can withstand a magnitude 10 earthquake. And the earthquake is auditors. So that not only will I not have to give money back, that I'm standing on my integrity, that I am consistent, I am deliberate, I am sustainable, and I am compliant. That builds your character, that builds your know, that builds your like, and that builds your trust. Because believe me, in contracting, contract officers talk to one another. And one contractor officer being able to say, you know what, they performed awesome, they exceeded at all the metrics, and we got good billing, and when they were audited, they was on point. Then they tell the next contracting officer in the next department, you know, you have this coming up, you might want to consider XYZ company. And then you'll get a call, or you may get an email saying, you know what, there's some new things coming down the pipe. You might want to see if you're a fit and see if you can gear up for it. And we'll discuss that in detail, how you can talk to the government about a contract coming down the pike and not be in violation. You have to keep an eye on that one. But that know, like, and trust spreads because this person will tell this person who will tell this person. And then the next thing you know, your base, your revenue base can grow. Your business is growing. That acceleration in profits and revenue and all of those things, you can start doing those projects that you want to do as far as making your community better. You know, that give back to the community. I love that. I do that in my organization. By being able to assure your employees you will have a job come tomorrow. And then employee morale goes up. This is all because of your compliance factor. That unsexy thing that you don't want to do because it's boring and you don't think it has anything to do with making money will create that lasting, solid foundation so that it will increase your ability to make more money just because you're compliant. But now I still have a little time left. So let's just stop here for a moment. I've thrown a whole lot at you about compliant policies and procedures. I've thrown a lot at you about compliant systems, accounting, payroll, and time reporting. I've jumped ahead of the game a little bit and I talked about records retention and I told you why they are so important. Please, if you're looking for a way to grow your business, I have some super friends that will get in there with you and they will help you get that first contract. They will help you do all of that. And I will help you keep the money from those contracts because that's what I do as your compliance specialist. But I need to impart upon you the importance of doing the thing that you do not want to do. So let's go, and we asked ourselves some questions. Is government contracting for me and my business? We discussed the products and services. Do you have any? Yes. Are they good? Yes. We discussed your method of delivery. Can you deliver these products and services in a efficient manner? We came up with the answer, yes. We talked about your systems. We talked about accounting system. Do you have one? Yes. No. What kind do you have? We can talk about that and deep dive on that later. Then we talked about records retention and writing policies. But now let's talk about the other part when we're going to try to up level. Now, in contracting, there are different types of contracts. Fixed price, T&M, that's time and material. And then we have cost contracts. That's where whatever you spend, that's what they reimburse you. Then there's a cost plus contracts. That's cost plus, just usually like a fee or something. And that's basically they give you your cost, they give you your profit, and then depending upon how you perform, they give you a bonus. I like to call it a bonus. They call it a fee, whatever. It's a bonus for performing at level. Now we want to talk about all those things. The risk to the government is in the cost contracts. The risk to you is in the fixed price. Shared risk is in your T&M contracts. Keeping that in mind, I said that to say this. Having all of these compliance systems and policies and procedures, going through your pre-award check, and and then you can hand your contracting officer, see, we have a pre-award check. We went through our systems. We went through our proposal writing process. We went through the cost allocation and cost collection, and we are hitting the matrices there. And you can perform these things utilizing, outside services. You really cannot ask the government to send an auditor to you. You can, but they won't do it. They have their own little schedule. But by hitting these matrices, then we can start shifting to contract vehicles. We can start shifting the contract types where the risk gets to shift to. Initially, you bear the risk. As time goes on, you share the risk with the government. Then as time goes on, the government bears the greater risk than you. And when I say risk, I'm talking about performance risk. And, the government is very conscious of the fact that some companies get awarded these contracts and either can't perform, don't perform. They go through audits and they're constantly non-compliant, and it creates a problem because if you have a business that's not performing and not meeting metrics, you have a business that's not following the rules or the laws that govern government contracting, and it just opens up a whole nother ball of wax. Now, I'm not trying to paint a picture of doom and gloom. I'm just trying to keep it real with you. Because contracting is a mechanism that can save your business. Government contracting can take your business to that next plateau. All of us open our door on the first day with a vision of prosperity for this dream that we're going to make a reality. And that prosperity looks like becoming a 8-figure business. It looked like being able to employ X number of employees consistently. It looked like being able to pay yourself a beautiful salary and to create that time for you and your family that you wanted to have that you could not get with your 9 to 5. That vision included that life for you and the fulfillment in walking in your purpose. And we all hear multiple streams of revenue, multiple streams of revenue. Everybody who's ever been a millionaire has multiple streams of revenue. I invite you to look at government contracting and the compliant aspect and seriously consider that your second line of revenue. And I'm going to take it another step. It's your second line of revenue with potentially 4 subsets of revenue. What are you talking about? The federal government has a contract budget. Each state has its own contract budget. Each county or parish, if you're in Louisiana, has its own contract budget. Each municipality, township has its own contract budget. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's actually 5 because DOD is not always included. And when people talk about government contracting, it's often talked about separately because of just how the government is set up. So there's 5 subsets of revenue, or 5 subcategorization of revenue in government contracting alone. So you can get that contract with the Senate and then turn around and get one with the Navy and then turn around. You see what I'm saying? It's a new line of revenue with at least 5 different offshoots, the possibilities there. But that growth and that being able to go through that is through that know, like, and trust, which comes through performing exquisitely on that first contract. But keep in mind, the contract is only the beginning. The real work starts after the reward of the contract. The real work starts on that go live date. The real work starts as you begin to build, and you must maintain these proper records. You must maintain these systems that say that we do what we say we're going to do. We do it the same way each time, and we do it consistently. And yes, we meet our metrics on the work, and we meet our metrics in the background. So we are a compliant company. And as you grow in compliance, as you grow in contracting, I want to talk to you about that next compliance factor, and that's disclosure statements. Now, there's a trigger in contracting that says once you're awarded a contract of X amount of money, I know CAS kicks in at $75,000 contract, so I believe that also triggers disclosure statements. So now, and all a disclosure statement is the government's version of a business plan. The disclosure tells the government, we use this accounting system to accumulate these costs, which are your cost collection. You know, how's your procurement system feeding into your accounting system? How do you procure things? Well, that's all a part of your policies and procedures that gets described semi-numerically in your disclosure statement. Then it tells the auditor how you generate your rates. You have a G&A rate? Yes. Well, how do we generate G&A rate? Well, we do X, Y, Z. Well, what is in the cost and what's in the base? Oh, well, this is in the book. That's all a disclosure statement is. It's actually a written walkthrough of your policies and procedures of all of your systems in a written format. And you want to ensure that you are compliant. I advise all of my clients to sit down and write a disclosure statement day one. Some people say wait until it triggers. An effective and efficient disclosure statement that you can then go back and review and compare it against all your systems takes some time. I like to say do it up front because it's a way for you to test yourself. Do you know how your company works? Do you know how your systems work? Do you know if your systems work together or not? Do you have a plug-in that you need to do to get from one system to the next system? Do you have a breakdown in your systems? Your disclosure statement will help you figure that out. It will help you map all of these things out so that you can ensure, so that you can stand on your integrity and tell your customer, yes, we are compliant. We do things the way we're supposed to do. So then, now the compliance fact, I'm going to jump back to cost. Cost is any expenditure within your company. Labor is a cost. Rent is a cost. Lights is a cost. Attendance at this conference, the Power Networking Conference, is a cost. And the government likes to know you are one, recording all of your costs, that you are two, coding these costs properly. And unfortunately, I don't have time to really get into that coding in detail, but I'm talking about they want to know, is this conference, let's just hypothetically speaking, is this conference a requirement of the contract? No. So then it's an indirect cost. They want to ensure that your systems will take your costs as you accrue them and then categorize them properly. Then your accounting system should be able to allocate these costs to their final cost objectives. If that's the project, or if that's just the overhead, or if that's, HR, you spend money on the Power Networking Conference. Is that a professional development cost in HR, or is it an employee cost? What is it? That's what these cost collections and allocations are about. You must ensure that you're compliant in the way you record your costs. You must ensure that you maintain the records. There is a policy in place that governs this. And I'm going to give you a little secret. Come in a little closer. You must have an approval system for incurring these costs. Yes. And it's going to make your life simple. There's a lot of technology out there that will just make this just flow through easily. But all of these systems are to protect you and your organization. The government wants to ensure somebody just didn't go out and spend a whole lot of money on something to bill the government a whole lot of costs, and you didn't attend. Nobody knew you were going. You're not aware that somebody just wrote a check for X amount of money to attend a conference that they didn't go to. So once again, it's building that character, that know, like, and trust. It's building your sustainability, that you have all of these things in place so that the government can be assured that you know what you're doing. And once again, as you build and as you grow and as your company graduates from level to level to level to level in contracting, these systems, now all systems need to be reviewed. Periodically, you're going to have to look at your policies and procedures. Periodically, you're going to have to look at your systems in place. Periodically, you're going to have to just review everything. And then you need to document your decision-making system. You're replacing this system with this system. Why? This system is more robust, is more likable. Do you have a CRM system, a customer relation management system? Yes, no. Well, you can get this system to me and use the CRM system to, keep track of your contracts. All of these things build into your compliance factor. All of these things give you what you need to grow to that next level. Because we're not talking about plateauing. I don't want anyone, I'm going to be transparent for a moment. When I first started my company, I felt like I was drowning. I didn't know what next to do. I didn't know what my next was. And you're talking to somebody, I'm a geek that talks in numbers. When somebody asks me a question, I actually write it out numerically first and then come back and then give you the words to go with the numbers. That's what I do. But I couldn't see my next. And how many of you out there, you can't see your next? You've gotten your company to this revenue level and you've been stuck there for months, years, maybe. Government contracting can be your up level. It can get you out of stuck and get you to that next platform. But what I tell you is don't be like me and drown for a long period of time. Because let me tell you, I wasn't even drowning. I had to come to the realization I wasn't drowning. I was actually standing on land. I had to stand up and say, let me take this life vest off. I got this. And I'm telling you, if you're trying to uplift your business and add that extra line of revenue, government contracting is the key. But the contract is only the beginning. Once you're awarded your contract, your compliance factor kicks in. Are you doing what you say you're going to do in a consistent manner? Do you do it in integrity? And do you do it consistently? Your compliance factor. Your strategies. What is your strategy in government contracting? Will you have to adopt or change anything? Having these policies and procedures in place and these systems in place make these decisions easier. Because you can go to your accounting system, pull out your report, and say, well, if we do X, Y, and Z, if we execute these strategies, we already at this level. Will we have to up level a little more? What does that look like? What does that cost? How did that affect our bottom line? What is our true revenue? We have a budget, and there's a compliance factor around budgeting, and budgets used for rate development. But our budget is here. If we adjust our budget a little bit, then will we be able to make these new metrics and goals? Your compliance factor helps you with those decisions. But if every time you do something, you're recreating the wheel, you're not only wearing yourself out, you're not only wearing out your team, but you're slowing down your progress because you won't implement your compliance factor. Those are your policies and procedures. Those are your accounting systems. Those are your records retention systems. That's your disclosure statements. Those are your audit preparedness programs. All a part of your compliance matrix. Now, if you want to continue this contract conversation around government contracting and your compliance factor, please join me June 1st at 8:30 a.m. Yes, I'm an early riser. I have twins, so I'm up early. And we will continue this conversation in the compliance factor. And then if you really want to just do some mastermind deep type conversation training, myself and two of my Power Sister friends, we are having our Power Conference on July 20th, 2016. Posted in the Compliance Factor group. I want to be there July 20th. I will send you the key. All of those who registered through the Power Networking Conference, PNC 16 Power Conference, will receive a discount on the ticket. So please keep that in mind. I look forward to talking to you on July 1st as we take this conversation to another level at the PNC 16 Compliance Factor After Party. But I really want to wind this conversation up this way. As I told you about that company that was sitting there having to refund this money, and our contract or our subcontract with them was their largest contract, and I believe their only contract. Can you imagine what it would feel like to hang up from a call saying you had to refund X number of dollars? And you pull out your records and you pull out your profit and loss statements. I hope you all have those. And you sit down and you close your doors and you see the effect of that refund. Because remember, the government asks for the actual cost back. They will slap you with a penalty for not recording the costs properly or not having the records to go with the recorded costs. And all of that money has to be given back. All because of a failure to keep a receipt. I mean, it really just comes down to a failure to keep a receipt. And let's take it to the next level. That receipt was not kept because there was nothing in place to instruct that employee, that program manager, that whomever, that they had to keep that. And I know somebody is saying, but that's just common sense. You have to keep your receipts. It may be common sense. It may appear to be ordinary, but more often than not, people don't keep those receipts. They submit their expense report and they go about their business. If you have a paper-based system, now I'm going to tell you, don't jump out here and say, Luciana said go digital. No, I did not say that. That's another, the federal government audit agency have a little words with you about this whole digital thing. And we're going to have to discuss that at the after party on June 1st at 8:30. But, and you're looking at the net effect of this check over a policy that probably could have been written in an hour, shared in 15 minutes through an email, and enforced with continuous training, yearly, bi-yearly, whatever your training schedule is for your employees. And that check can mean the difference between being here tomorrow because of a piece of paper, whether that paper is a receipt or is a policy, or the non-existence of a procurement system. No one wants to be in that position. No one likes the way it feels to even think about being in that position. So I implore you, consider your compliance factors. Implement those systems and those policies. Ask yourself, what do you know? And if you text 301-448-6133 and just write in the word compliance factor, you will not only receive a do you know document, which will give you a series of questions that you need to ask yourself prior to entering government contracting, but you will also receive a list of your compliance factors. These key elements that every business in contracting needs to have. Remember, the contract is only the beginning. Remember, the work begins after the award. Remember your compliance factors. This is Luciana Turner of the LT&A Group. If you wish to stay in contact with me, just drop me a line at info@LTandAConsultingGroupLLC.com.